A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm extremely happy and honored to lead this panel discussion. What we've heard as common themes across the two categories of people who are presented, the tribal and the rural, was that they were looking for quite a bit of help in terms of mentoring support, in terms of connections. But I think what was the overwhelming favorite was in terms of funding and particularly CSR funding. So this session is a session which is focused on various organizations which look at CSR funding from different perspectives. The type of initiatives which they promote are varying in nature. But the underlying theme, I think, which we all believe in is that CSR funding is a serious business now. Organizations are very prudent and careful about what all initiatives do they support. They have a particular methodology of evaluation of prospective organizations looking at getting this funding. And I thought this was a very relevant discussion to have as part of this NCSI forum to get the perspective of prominent organizations and what they look at or what they look for in potential entrepreneurs who are looking at CSR funding. Very delighted to have three stalwarts who are associated with prominent organizations. So without any further ado, I think we should get started with the session. So Puja, I'm going to start off with you, and if the requirement is that an entrepreneur comes up to you and asks you for funding or support for CSR funding, then what are common do's and don'ts which you would look at from extending this funding help?
Hi. It's working. Thank you. Hi everyone. Pleasure connecting with all of you today. Often I really shy talking about myself. And, we had a session earlier where they talked about that many of the social innovators don't like talking about themselves. And I think I'm just the same. But today I'm going to talk a bit about myself for the reason, because, I sort of worked with the corporate foundations. I worked with the international NGOs, donor agencies, but also at some point of time in my career, I felt like going back to the NGOs, understanding how do they work on the ground. So thankfully, that gave me a perspective of it from different lenses, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. In fact, when I was working with the NGO partners and we would reach out to a lot of donors, I'm going to interestingly pitch my larger presentation from that perspective today, that as NGOs, how should you reach to the donors and what is it that the CSR entities are really looking for? I think the most important thing is, and I'm going to really talk about very basics. The first and most important thing is know your CSR entity, the entity that you're reaching out to, know them well. So do some research. And I honestly say that in today's day and age, where the technology has made it possible, the websites, social media handles, there's so much public information out there. Understand what are their CSR qualities. And if you see so long ago, one would do a blind emailing or a random emailing. I'm essentially saying don't do that. Do a lot more focused, targeted reach out to the CSR entities where you see a synergy, because that's where you will see success primarily coming in from. Now, once you made the first connect, the most important thing is you'll possibly, hopefully get to meet the CSR entity, the so-called meeting. And in my head, that's a make or break moment. Those 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever you get, do please prepare well for it. Do you have a deck, but not a generic deck? Are you customizing it? And that's where one necessarily sees a break, miss often. So, for example, again, talking from my experiences, I've seen that an NGO partner would be talking about their environment initiative to a CSR entity who is focusing on education. So you lost those 15, 20 minutes. So it's very important that you're pitching about the organization. Then you're also talking about the project. And I think that's where the bigger miss happens. A lot of NGO partners come in and start talking about their organization. But what they're essentially pitching for, that particular project, that doesn't get enough time. So it really, in your head, it really needs to be thought to 5-7 minutes, depending upon the quantum of time you have. Maybe first 15% of your time to set up the organization, or 20% of time. Then talk about the project. And when you're talking about the project, the most important thing is talk about impact. Again, I would say the sector has gone through a shift recently. And in the sector today, we are talking about impact, not activities. And I think that's where a lot of NGO partners, they would continue talking about we'll do X, Y, and Z activity. But what do those activities translate into? What's the transformation or the change they bring on the ground? That doesn't come out too prominently. And I can tell you that for any CSR entity, the biggest deciding factor whether to go with any NGO partner is what is the impact one is creating on ground. So be very mindful of the impact that you're creating. Second is, the social return on investment. So coming to the fact that when you're talking about impact, do talk about data. And I've often seen that, we do say there is a human side to the story, and it is important to bring out that human side. But the bigger picture also has to be brought out. Therefore, you need to present a lot of data to back up what you're doing at the individual level. So somewhere I've seen organizations who focus only on the human side of the story, the bigger picture gets lost. I've seen the other side of it, which is all about data and the human side of the mission that one is trying to drive on the ground gets lost. So I think one needs a balance therein. And you see, essentially any CSR entity would like to work at a scale, largely. And if you see, we were hearing so many pitches since morning. We're all talking about what is a larger scale, because the problems of India need scalable, replicable solutions primarily. Now, when you're talking about scale, it's important that you have a cost-efficient model as well. So look at the costing as well. Now, when it comes to costing, again, from my experience, I've seen there are NGO partners who inflate the cost, assuming there would be multiple rounds of negotiation. But I'll tell you, the smarter partners are those who have done their benchmarking in the sector. They know for a certain kind of theme, what are the kind of competitive costings around, and keep it there. It's fine to keep a 10-15% variation, but not massive. You can't make it double, triple, because then you lost the opportunity, because the CSR entity may feel the costings are way too high. Because mind you, CSR players are also doing their own benchmarking all the time to understand for this kind of intervention, these are the kind of costings involved. So look at that, because from a cost efficiency and scale perspective, look at your budgets, and that should be a constant endeavor to see how do you bring those efficiencies in the entire thing. Earlier in the day, we had a speaker who talked about flexibility. And I think as young entities, that would be one input. While you're working with CSR players, it is not to say that here is a proposal, whether you would want to accept it. Because today the CSR players also are believing in doing a lot of co-creation together. So keep that scope for co-creation in the whole thing and have some bit of flexibility. So when I say flexibility, I don't mean to say that, completely leave your key benchmarks. Essentially, within the larger framework, have a certain amount of flexibility, because that would help you to bring in certain innovations as well in the whole thing, and it will only help you. And I'll talk about one example of mine years ago. We were there as a young, I was working with an NGO partner, and we were working with, and there was this another competitor who was an international donor. And as a young NGO, we showed a lot of flexibility in terms of co-creation. And the bigger NGO player came with the thought process to say that this is the way it ought to be, that school of thought. But to be very honest, at the end of that entire experience, what happened was that organization's revenues multiplied for 4-5 folds in one go. So it completely takes you to a very, very different league altogether. Beyond this, if I have to talk about, I would also say co-creation I talked about, I would say be open to the feedback. And in fact, seek feedback. It doesn't hurt. So even if at times you reach to a CSR entity and the project falls apart at certain stage of it, I would actually say go back. If you honestly seek genuine, honest feedback from the CSR players, they're ready to tell. They're ready to tell you whether the weak link was the impact piece, the budget piece, what was it essentially. Okay. The other factor is the accountability, transparency, and others. So these are a couple of bigger learnings. I know, Amit almost given me a cue, and I'll stop here. I just want to say one important thing. It's not NGO partners versus the CSR entities. I think we are part of the same coin. We are driven by the same larger purpose to make a difference in the society. The idea is to create a win-win to make sure that we reach those who need our support best in a most impactful manner. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Pooja, for these insights. Kurush, we had this discussion a little while back about alignment of goals, right? Organizations such as yourself has some certain goals or certain perspectives on the kind of CSR projects they wish to support. Different organizations here have different entrepreneurs here have different goals. Now, the open question is whether there should be an alignment between the goals, and there comes up a point in time where different entrepreneurs also try and tailor their goals to align with the CSR goals of organizations such as yourselves. So what would be your take on this whole thing?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm here representing Bajaj Finserv CSR. Amit, while I answer that, I'll just add maybe a couple more context from building up on what even Pooja shared, and it's linked to the question. See, CSR is a wide spectrum. Roughly 2 years back from what data is available, I think 28,000 crores was what the CSR kitty was from all the companies. And it has a long tail. Over 5,000 companies contribute to it, but the top 100 are 50% of that share. Right? So it's a very, very long tail from that perspective. Secondly, CSR funds will mirror the growth, the bottom line growth of the companies, because it's quite formulaic in that sense. So you'll expect it to grow at 10-12% as the companies are growing, right? So the funds are only increasing at that pace. I know this topic is on CSR, and I'm sure all of you are aware, but the whole HNI funding, what's coming from different foundations, retail funding, in fact, that's a larger bucket than the CSR buckets. At least, I may be stating the obvious, but it's important that we don't lose sight of that, because most of the partners who came and presented, they spoke about CSR funding. If I was you, I would say funding is your requirement. CSR is one of the levers, and it comes with its nuances, right? Because it also is boxed in terms of who's eligible, what type of projects you can take on, what is the length of it, whereas the other money which can come in doesn't come with those limitations. So I just want to first put that on the table. Coming to your specific question, most organizations, I would believe, are now migrating to a path where they're defining their priorities. Okay, CSR mein kya karna hai? These are the 1, 2, 3 what we want to work on. At least the bigger ones, right? That what they want to do. And this information is not difficult to get. Like Pooja mentioned, if you go to their websites, their CSR sections, you just follow what is being spoken of. Now impact assessment reports are available. So little bit effort, you have access to all the information, which tells you what is there. in our context, for example, we focus on skilling as one of our focus areas. We are not saying that the other areas are not important, but we have made a conscious choice that skilling is a big focus area. Now, if somebody were to come to me and talk about climate, I'm not saying it's not important, but it is not aligned with our defined priorities. And frankly, we will not even have a first level discussion with them because it is not aligned with the priorities and the focus areas we are called out on. So I think that first level alignment is extremely important. Now, somebody from climate tries to position it as skilling, and people do. Right? So people will also try and say how climate says, skilling says. So, I mean, that's really, stretching it to some level. Right? So I would, at least personally for me, that's a big red flag, and those are not examples that show alignment. But say within skilling, again, there is a whole spectrum, right? You could be working on blue collar jobs, white collar jobs, self-employment, micro-entrepreneurship. So depending on what you're doing in that space, there, how do you form the common linkages becomes important. But changing the goals to align with the partner goals would not be the right approach. Being aware is a great starting point. Finding commonality so that you can work together and create something together makes sense. But don't stretch it would be something that at least we follow and pursue from that perspective.
Thank you, Kurush. Yogita, over to you. Different mentees which we have worked with have constantly asked us this question that what are the assessment criteria, or what are the factors which organizations will look when they want to engage with the partner and offer CSR help. So it would be great if you could share some amount of insight on what are the common assessment criteria or some of the common standards which you look for.
Sure, thank you. I'm Yogita, I'm from Persistent, and I'm blessed to be here today. I have my mentor, my guru, one of our trustee over here in front of me. In terms of what do we look at when any proposal comes to us? So as Puja was just mentioning, don't write cold mails, just that we are this organization and that. But I would like to share one interesting story of a cold mail. So what we look at when we select a partner. So partner selection also starts from a cold mail also. That mail was written in such an interesting manner that the end line of the mail was that it's fine if presently we are not able to partner with you because we are not fitting into your criteria or your budgets are over. We would like to have a feedback from you on our work that we are doing. And so after reading that line, I really fall in love with that mail, and I called them back, and now we are working with them for last 4 years. So this is how, if you are really want to make a connect, you will have that innovative way of writing a cold mail also. So that is one. Second, in terms of actual proposal assessment. Everyone over here is aware about the legal diligence, so I will not talk about it. But please keep in mind that every year there is some or the other addition that is happening, and it is always good to, what is good to have is to have it. Just not leave that because it is good to have. Because a CSR partner will always have more confidence on you when you will have good to have things when it comes to legal compliances. In terms of social compliances, we do make an effort to reach out to the partners with whom they are already working in. We do make an effort to go to the communities where they are already existing. More than what they are going to offer us, we are interested in talking to them about the challenges that the organization is facing in implementing the projects. So if at all the organization is open in discussing the challenges, that means that they have the flexibility. They are open to, so for example, if a project is going on well and if there is some tricky situation that comes in, they are not going to hide it, but they are going to share it. So that kind of confidence is something which we try to see. So challenges, visibility, impact, budget, and employee engagement are the 5 parameters on which we as Persistent assess every project. Social assessment, yes, that comes into it. And there are some projects like Kurush was mentioning. There was one organization who we approached saying that we are not able to work in this framework which you have offered, but if there is some change, we will work. They said, no, we can't change. Then we engaged with them for employee engagement. So it is true what he is saying, that corporates are looking out for organizations like that who stand for themselves. So it is not like that you should always change everything for the CSR partner that you are going up to. So these are some of the basic points.
Okay, thanks, Yogita. Pooja, over to you. So I know a lot of ideas presented here today were in the area of skill development, local entrepreneurship. I was just reading up on Flipkart Foundation, and that is one area which you consider important and you support. So can you give us some insights onto some examples of engagements which have gone well?
Sure. So, friends, Flipkart Foundation was formally launched in April 2022. So, in that sense, we are a very young entity in itself. So, for us, there are 4 thematic areas that we work upon. This includes, working with micro nano entrepreneurs to help them access wider markets. We do skill development, environmental responsibility, and community development. And I'll talk about the little work that we have been doing since last 2.5 years around skill development and entrepreneurship. Now, for skill development, of course, we work through the NGO partners. The stance that we have taken is that we would not just do pure skilling. No harm in doing that, but that's a stance we have taken, that skilling has to be sort of complemented with employability, employment opportunities as well. So we are talking about placement as well. So in terms of skilling, we have been focusing on youth coming from low-income families, and we also have been doing skilling programs for persons with disabilities, transgender youth. So for youth coming from low-income families, we have been doing 21st century skills. We also have been doing BFSI training programs for them. For persons with disabilities, we have been doing experiential learning, because you got to do a lot more experiential hands-on training programs for them. In fact, for them, the training programs are also residential in nature, and you also support them with a lot of assistive adaptive devices, because it can't just be training. They may need other support as well to make them, support them enough to be independent. And then with persons, transgender community youth, what we did was a training program with focus on hospitality skills primarily. Now, of course, depending upon the theme, the duration varies. It could be anywhere between 45 days to 6 months of training. But what remains uniform across all our training programs is the fact that we ensure that the youth get placement support. And over and above the placement support, we also make sure that we stay connected with the youth post-placement for about 6 months maximum. It varies from a partner to partner. 3 months to 6 months is what we have been trying to do to see that they are still continuing in the jobs. How it, of course, all of us here, we understand how it helps. It helps to break that cycle of poverty. You're empowering youth for a lifetime. You're providing them confidence, dignity, self-esteem, and more. Coming to the entrepreneurship program of ours, the focus there lies to help the local artisans and also the micro and nano entrepreneurs access wider markets. The premise is that if they have access to wider markets, they would be able to earn better. When they earn better, they would also have sustainable, livelihoods, and they would be empowered for a lifetime. That's the kind of a premise we have taken. So what we do is, as a first step in our entrepreneurship programs, we build the capacity of these local artisans. So we have a project that we have been doing in West Bengal, Birbhum area. This is almost 300 kilometers from Kolkata. Now we work with rural women out there, artisans out there. And the idea is to build the capacity in terms of enhancing their quality indicators, inventory management, bringing them up to speed in terms of what are the market trends today, in terms of what are the kind of products that would sell in the market today. And of course, we had colleagues earlier who talked about building the market linkage, because that's where the larger failures happen often. So essentially trying to run it end to end. Similarly, we've been doing some work in UP, in Varanasi, in Lucknow, where we work with micro and nano entrepreneurs, and we have been helping them in formalizing the schemes. And we're talking about schemes like PAN, FSSAI, Udyam registration, because Udyam registration is the first thing if you want to start on your own. And then we also help them to access the credits under the PM Swanidhi and others. So that's some work that we have done at Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you. So Kurush, you would have realized that looking at the kind of entrepreneurs who are coming up, they vary in size. They can be right from a small size startup to now we heard the past, the mentees who have now developed into larger organizations. My question to you or request to you would be, if you have had one journey where you've started with a smallish sort of organization and grown with the organization with which you have supported, maybe that would be very insightful for the people here to understand what kind of relationship should you build and the whole experience of that. So,
Sure, Amit. And in fact, at least at Bajaj, we have many such examples, but I'll be candid, it's not easy. I think for every one such example where we have that story, possibly there are 20 others who had reached out, but we could not, right,
Yeah.
for a set of reasons. So I'll start by saying it's not easy. And when I think about it, there are some commonalities one sees. So I think now what is very helpful is our platforms like this, right? So through a platform like this, already a certain level of curation has been done, a certain level of build-up has been done. So anybody who's sitting on this dais and presenting what they're doing or has gone through the process, has gone through a certain amount of coaching, mentoring, filtering, and we associate certain readiness from that perspective. And there are many such platforms which exist in the country today. And we, in fact, fund some of those platforms in certain specific areas where we're interested in, even from creating those entrepreneurs. That's one example. Right? So there are collaborators where there could be incubation centers, and we say we are looking at social entrepreneurs in skilling space. So they evaluate, they bring on, we are part of that process. And so the journey starts right from there, and then can build up going forward from that perspective. But this at least makes, for me, it's a great starting point, right? And versus just directly reaching out, because it has qualified to some extent. Second, somebody referring makes a huge difference, right? So if Dina were to say that, hey, this is the team and I really know them, I will put more attention to it than I would have otherwise, right? So I think coming with that reference, and that reference could be of different things. Since you're mentioning, I'll just take a name also. So one of our partners, we work in the PWD space, is a partner called Nai Disha. They're Hyderabad based, quite small. And I think they were one of the 7 finalists today, Prachi had told me. So we've been working with them for last 3-4 years, and they're still very small. But when they started, they managed to get some funding in some private setup. And through some reference, they spoke to our teams that they're doing good work. Why don't you look at them? Now, when it comes from a fellow partner colleague, it just comes with that much more credit. And we do the same also, right? Okay. So then when we spend time with them, and the second thing I'll say is patience, right? These things don't happen in one meeting. It's a journey. You take time to understand each other. You look for what works. You spend time on the field. But through that journey, you understand each other better and what sort of partnership you want to take. And that's why, are you a CSR funder or a CSR partner? That determines the journey very differently. If you're a funder, it's a very different journey. We take the partner piece seriously, and that's why our journeys are more evolved, more detailed, and more long-standing in that nature. So if I look at Nai Disha as an example, we've continued with them for now. Now we are an extent, we are now trying to build that ecosystem for them. We are making calls on their behalf. Why don't you talk to these few partners and see what happens and how we can build them from that perspective. Right? So there are quite a few examples, Amit, where and a lot of them, some of them are very Pune based also. They started small in education, in inclusion, and now they've grown Okay. And I think one of the, where you spoke about the secondary education, I teach when they started in Pune, and it's a PPP model, it is for Pune, for secondary schools. So it started with us, they've grown to now so many schools. Now they're having pull from different municipalities saying, come to our section. They have built a funding base, but that journey has to start from somewhere.
Okay.
And I believe platforms like this and references just makes that choice easier, because the good bad news is we have lots of things to solve for, and there are so many partners who want to solve for it. Deciding who to go with is not easy from that sense.
Thank you. So I like that analogy or the distinction which you made between CSR funder and a CSR relationship kind of thing. So Yogita, this brings me on to a very interesting concept of how do you develop a relationship with an organization, and what it actually takes to actually nurture that relationship, build that relationship. So if you could just elaborate on some of the points which go in making a healthy and stable relationship.
Sure. So as Persistent, we are presently working with more than 40 plus organizations, and in my career with Persistent in 9 years, we have discontinued only with 2 partners, and that too were reasons of finances. So those were critical. Other than that, so in every project there are some ups and downs. So it is not that all our partner is delivering excellently, there are no delays, everything is in place. It's not like that. So that's the way it is. So that's the way the partnership is built. So one thing is, we always start very small, and we are very transparent when right from our first meeting with the partner. So that is probably what the organization believes in, and it gets translated into the work. So right from the first meeting, we make it very sure and that we communicate in a very clear manner that what are our expectations, how do we look at it, what is going to be the approval process, what are probably going to be the challenges for us also as a CSR team when we are presenting the project. So what is it that we need from you, in what time frame we need it from you. What if the project gets approved, then in what time frame you need to complete things. So that is something which is being shared with the partner when they submit the first proposal. We don't ask the partner to submit a complete foolproof proposal in the initial discussion. We first discuss it with our primary approving authorities. If at all it fits into our criteria of work areas, our physical geographies, we think that the organization is okay. So primary screening happens at the team level, then at my level, then at chairperson level, and then the proposal goes to the foundation board to get approved. And all this process is being shared with the partner. And that gives them also confidence. So when I say that no, at this level the proposal is rejected, they are aware it is not a shock for them. So although we are saying that this year it is not possible, next year we'll try, they come back to us. So that is one, that transparency helps. Second, when you are you need to decide for yourself that what kind of relationship you want to build with your partner. Is it a donor-donee relationship, or do you really want to build a partnership and want to have a stake in that? And if you want to have a stake in that, then understand the project completely. Just don't look at the monitoring indexes and whether they are filled up. What it takes to fill that data, you should be aware of it. So if I'm asking that whether the water levels of groundwater levels have increased or not, then I should be able to understand what is the process that the partner is using to assimilate the data. And I should be engaged in that. I should ask those questions if I'm not aware of. Then only the partner will feel that, oh, it's not a donor-donee relationship. And it's no harm in having a donor-donee relationship, but make it clear to your partner also. So, and whatever projects you are involved in, if at all, see, as CSR team, you are not the ones who know everything of every project. So, as we expect flexibility, adaptability from our CSR partners, as CSR teams, we also need to be flexible and adaptable and open to learning, and that's the way the relationship is built.
All right. So now I'll just throw open the floor to questions. Unfortunately, we have limited time, so just one or two questions. The gentleman there, please. Yeah, you can ask.
We are discussing about skilling, entrepreneurship, micro entrepreneurs. I just wanted to quickly ask the panelists, like, how many of them are working with incubators who are supporting such entrepreneurs?
We have worked with one or two, not many, and that also with guided platforms and everything, not independently and not on a very large scale at this point of time.
Hello.
We are. So again, it's a small part of the work we do, but by design, we kept some amount of our effort and money towards that. So with a partner called Nudge, we are supporting a set of incubators cohort who are specifically working on skilling. And like I mentioned earlier, we are part of their journey, including the selection of the process, what is the progress from there on. So part of our work we do, we keep towards such incubation efforts.
Yes, one more.
हा नमस्कार, मी गणेश. मला योगिता आपटे यांना प्रश्न विचारायचा आहे. आवाज येतोय?
हो.
प्रश्न असा विचारायचा आहे की भारतामध्ये सगळ्यात जास्त CSR महाराष्ट्रामध्ये आणि पुण्यामध्ये जास्त त्याचा वापर होतो. हेल्थ, एज्युकेशन आणि एन्व्हायरमेंट या 3 विषयाच्या पलीकडे का आपण जात नाही, हा माझा प्रश्न.
हेल्थ, एज्युकेशन आणि एन्व्हायरमेंट असे जेव्हा तुम्ही 3 मोठे I'll answer in Marathi as he has asked the question in Marathi. Health, education and environment asa jeva okay, health, education, environment, when you're saying that in education also, as we have seen, there are many sections and sectors in which we need to work on. For example, there is a large portion probably in rural tribal areas where we need to focus on primary or pre-primary education. But as one of the presenter has also presented, secondary education in urban sector, where the pull for the labor is more, the concentration on secondary section in urban sector is more. So it is not that Pune doesn't need CSR funding. I agree to your point that yes, there is a lot of concentration of CSR funds in Pune, and Pune as a city. So at least we can broaden our arms and say Pune as a district, because there are many talukas in Pune also who are deserving and who need support in all these pointers. So yes, we as I said, we also need learning, we also need flexibility. So similarly, we are also expanding our arms. Initially we had restricted, and till now also we say that Pune district is our work area, but along with that we have also started working in Koina as part where environmental initiatives will be more appropriate, where they are building a elephant corridor. So there we are doing some environmental bit of it. In Junnar, Ambega, Velhe, which are the 3 talukas. So in Pune also, in cities our work is very limited, but in Junnar, Ambega and Velhe our work is concentrated, and there we are working for quite a long time. So although you are working in an area where CSR funds are concentrated, you can pick up an area where you are most required. So
All right. I'm sorry, we won't be in a position to take more questions. I'd just like to thank the panel, Yogita, Puja, and Kurush, for sharing the valuable insights. Hopefully, some of the insights presented would be useful to many of the entrepreneurs who have gathered here today. And thank you so much for this session.
Thank you, panelists. Before leaving, I would invite Dr. Premnath, Dr. Venugopalan Premnath, to felicitate our panelists and the moderator.
Can I? Maybe outside?
thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good insights. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Yeah. So, come. Okay, come here, baby. Please come. Thank you. Thank you.